Black Myth Wukong, 10 Things You Need to Know by Game Ranks. Subscribe to Game Ranks if you haven't already. Make good content. We're going to find out if we want to get Wukong or not.
Like me, and I not only
As this Falcon.
being an informed purchaser, but I also just like
Yeah, that sucks, actually.
To be honest, when a good-looking game seems like it might be deserving of the hype, I'm all about it. And I think this might be one of those games.
I feel like it is.
Falcon, and today on
The
Game
Falcon.
Ranks, 10 things you need to know about
Let's
Black
hear the 10 things
starting
we
off at number
need
10,
to
let's answer
know.
the easy questions. Black Myth Wukong is an action RPG
Of
based
course.
on Journey to the West,
Right.
which is Chinese folklore, specifically a very old novel written many decades ago. You play as Wukong, the Monkey King.
The Monkey King.
Lush environments, and you battle titanic bosses.
Yep.
It's been developed by a Chinese studio called Game Science.
Game
which is
Science.
not actually the worst name, and you might be able to expect that at least in its home country, there's a massive amount of hype and
Oh,
expectation.
I like that the fire actually affects him. That's
given
cool.
that historical relevance. Now, Chinese history
graphics
is
look
actually
incredible.
pretty well regarded and known by a lot of the Chinese people, as is Chinese folklore. So you
Yep.
can imagine their familiarity and therefore expectation. Now,
Right.
in terms of what the game is beyond that, you run around Chinese mythology-inspired environments. You collect souls called will in this.
Souls.
You rest at shrines. You drink from a gourd that functions exactly like an Estus flask.
Mm-hmm.
You lose a portion of your experience when you die. It's all the usual trappings of
Souls-like.
the Souls-like genre.
Yeah.
But that doesn't really reflect the whole game. There is
Right.
actually a lot that makes it different. That's what we're talking about today specifically. Many
The heck
have
was
called
that?
this a Souls-like in previous, including myself. And while I do
I mean,
think that
yeah,
is
I agree.
appropriate based
Is
on
that a
lot
bunch of clones?
of the game,
You can summon a bunch of clones of
probably
yourself?
going to be an entirely accurate description when you're talking about the entire conversation. Now,
Please be good.
interestingly
Please be
enough,
good.
Aside from all of that stuff, we
Sure it
talked
will
about
be.
that are kind of the basics of the Souls-like. It might
Golly.
actually have a little more in common with the recent God of War games of all things, but also that doesn't explain what this game exactly is, because again, all that Souls-like stuff's right there. So to put it simply,
Yeah.
based on the fact that
Like
all
Neo?
of the elements I keep picking out are games that I like, I'm pretty excited to find out exactly what it is. Now, none of that is a guarantee of quality. I mean, that Day Before game was also one of the most...
Oh my god, yeah, I know.
But from everything I've seen,
That's
and all the videos
crazy.
I've read, all the information I've taken in, all the videos I've watched, Black Myth Wukong has the potential to be something special. So, with all that said, let's talk about the combat. Moving on to number
Combat looks
9,
good.
There are no dedicated parry or block buttons. For me,
Okay.
this is a big one. Every Souls-like in recent memory has been laser focused on parrying.
Parrying, yeah.
Sekiro started the trend, and to
Yes.
be fair, does it very well.
Amazingly.
Jedi games, Stellar Blade, the Team Ninja games, Nine
Yep.
Souls, they're all about parries, and this isn't really something I'm complaining about per se, but seeing a game like this come along without a dedicated parry button, or even a
Oh,
button,
so you just have to
really
dodge.
stands out. In Black Myth, your combat tools are a little more focused. You only have one kind of weapon, the Monkey King's magic staff,
Right.
a regular combo button that can be held down to perform heavy attacks.
Yeah, but I know he could summon that many clones,
I'll get
man.
into more detail later. Magic spells.
He could fly or walk on clouds and has a
Dodge
big
button.
stick.
I mean, outside of parry and block,
That's the monkey kick.
in this game, based on what I've seen, is all about that dodge button. It's your primary way of avoiding damage, and from all the previews I've seen, it's fairly forgiving, although I'm speculating a little bit here based on footage. There does seem to be a pretty large invulnerability window. There's a stamina meter that you'll have to keep an eye on that's right on
Okay,
the
yeah, I
shield
see
game, but
it.
the rest of the combat feels more like a straight-up action game. It's faster. I've mentioned that a few times. I've also mentioned Bayonetta when I'm saying it's not necessarily Bayonetta fast, because it's not. That being said, the dodge mechanics do look a little Bayonetta-ish. Looks like it plays by the Bayonetta rules. We can dodge up to 3 times in a row. The third dodge has a longer recovery window, though. In general, combat in Black Myth looks really fast and brutal. Like I said, not necessarily platinum fast, but pretty fast, given that it does crib a lot in terms of the basic gameplay elements from a Souls-like. I mean, some of this stuff, in comparison, looks absolutely lightning fast. And I really like the focus on movement rather than the usual parry gameplay of just planting yourself.
I mean, yeah, I can agree.
And staying there. It's definitely refreshing. And I want to say, I do enjoy parry mechanics, but not every single one of these games needs to be Sekiro.
No.
I like a little variety.
You're absolutely
and also,
right.
It doesn't look like it's going to be Sekiro in all honesty.
No.
There's a lot of defensive abilities that seem to work.
Ooh.
maybe a spell or a transformation, but they really
That
don't
was
seem
dope.
to be central to the experience. And actually, that's kind of an element of why I'm interested in this. It's not like I think, oh, get rid of the parry. It's, oh, nice, something different.
So it's like you can use the
There's a
staff
lot more
as like a
combat mechanics I want to
parry
get into.
almost.
But let's just stop for now and appreciate how good this game looks.
Oh, yeah.
Moving on to number 8, the visuals are friggin' amazing.
Fantastic.
You can't talk about this game without mentioning the visuals. I think I have mentioned them literally every single time I brought this game up because it looks insane. There's legitimate next-gen stuff here. Even from the recent Gamescom demo of Lone, they've showed off some stuff in the starting area, Blackwind Mountain. Everything.
Turning into like the other creatures is kind of weird to me, but whatever. You can turn into a fly if you want to.
Realistic, but the bosses, they're actually the real highlight. Their opening cutscenes look absolutely stunning, and the way they move around and animate is really impressive. Combat looks really smooth and seamless. There's not really any hint of jankiness or awkwardness in the way the combat works, and sometimes you do get that even in a good one. It looks great. It seems to run really well.
Oh, look at that. He's flying out of cloud just like you said.
Demo came out saying the same thing, that the game runs buttery smooth for an Unreal 5 game. Obviously, this is coming from a carefully curated demo using developer PCs, but still, good sign for the game's performance. If there's one thing that's a little concerning related to the graphics, it's that we have gotten no footage whatsoever of the console versions. The trailers are all made with PC gameplay, which calls
but I mean, I'm on a PC,
like on consoles. So hopefully,
sorry, console people.
The PS5 has better specs than the recommended requirements for the PC version, but
I'm sure it'll look fine.
Game or a trailer that includes footage from the console versions, we don't know how it's going to run on consoles. Which, on one hand, is great for people who play the games on PC, like myself. I'm certainly going to play it there.
Absolutely.
I've my mouth quite a bit about bad PC ports and how the PC has been kind of languish on a lot of high-profile titles. This doesn't look that way because the PC seems to really run
suffer as I have, right?
Which final release. Moving on to number 7, there's Ghost of Tsushima-like stances. One of the key elements of combat in this game is focus, which may or may not be the final name in the retail version. Apparently, the devs are still workshopping it.
I was thinking like Neo with the stances,
enemies. So when
because there's
you can use it to perform
different stances that you could do.
These vary depending on your stances, which there are 3 of, and they can be swapped around by pressing the D-pad, which is exactly how it worked in Tsushima. The stances we know are
so
the
they copied that
stance,
from there,
which allows you to perform a quick smash attack in the middle of a combo, which is really powerful and can often be used to interrupt enemy attacks. And the pillar stance, which is one that sounds really interesting. In the pillar stance, Wukong will stand on top of his staff and extend it to rise above.
Oh, that is so cool.
It uses stamina to stay up there.
But what?
Pretty much avoid any attacks.
Look at that, dude.
Change focus. This is one of those abilities in the trailer.
Oh, and he smacked him in the head.
There's no way something this powerful and cool would be in the final game, or you'd only be able to do it at specific scripted moments. But no, it seems like a power you can use at any point.
He got him.
And the demo impressions are very positive about it. Seems to work as advertised. From the pillar stance, there's also a powerful downward attack that can be performed when the focus is full.
I see that.
So the general gameplay loop of Black Myth seems to be relatively weak, light attacks to build up focus.
Look at that! Look at that! Boom!
Special ability.
Pulling it forward.
Know
that's
what
dope.
That third stance is, but that's okay.
Bring it like go all the way up your pole and then just.
And number 6, there are spells and transformations, which is exciting. There's spells; they work pretty much exactly how to expect. They're magic abilities that cost mana, and they cool down. The starting spell you get is Immobilize, which slows down enemies and makes them pickings.
You guys are funny.
What about this spell is that it works on bosses too, but only occasionally. Some bosses are more resistant to it, while other bosses from the demo are apparently
look at that paralyze,
like they ignore it. So it'll depend on the boss,
him.
whether these abilities are effective or not.
Ooh, and it glows up on the backhand side, so you know what you got to hit.
Earlier demos, it seems like there's a lot of crazy stuff you can unlock eventually, anyways.
There's the clone jutsu. There they all go.
Which is one of the Monkey King's most famous abilities in the original story.
So many clones.
Transformations, which you unlock from bosses and optional encounters.
I was on for a minute.
Literally let you transform into your enemy for a short period of time.
Hey, look at this. Boom.
When you really need to
turns into a different enemy.
To let you play as the boss for a minute or two. This completely changes up your attacks, obviously.
Yeah.
Let you perform some of the boss's super moves.
That's very cool.
Sounds awesome. Taking damage while in this form does also take seconds off the clock, so you can't just go completely nuts. You got to play smart if you really want to maximize the effectiveness of these transformations. They aren't just this game's version of the Devil Trigger either. Some of the
Oh yeah, Devil Trigger. I didn't even think
there's
of.
one where you can turn it into
Yeah, the fur looks really good, right?
players. There's also the ability to turn into a bug and fly past enemies.
Well, I appreciate
One of
that
the
last
trailers
very
was an
much.
early one. So not all these transformations are combat oriented. Some are just for fun or maybe to sneak around. These transformations do have long cooldowns, so they're not something you can use all
Yeah, they
the
made the
time,
fur
but
look
as
really
bosses,
realistic.
They sound awesome. At number 5, the difficulty is apparently a little more on the forgiving side than
Okay.
your typical quote-unquote Souls-like.
Do you change the difficulty or no?
Game, but from everything I've heard, the developers want to make it at least accessible and a less brutally difficult game. I've seen reports say that the difficulty is more like Jedi Fallen Order than Elden Ring.
Okay.
But
Yeah,
that
that's
may
not
be
bad.
based on a 2-hour demo, which was set during the opening hours of the game. Could be different. Final result could be tougher. And in contrast, I've seen a lot of people talk about the demo by saying it's very challenging, but that usually comes from players less experienced in the
I was
genre.
gonna say, yeah,
Still,
people that don't
I've
play
read
Souls
multiple
games, yeah.
interviews where developers have come out and said they wanted to make the game something more players could enjoy, so I'm inclined to believe that the game will overall be...
See, there's not a parry mechanic, but there is parry
Bench, I
spell.
mean, it's gonna be
I think
easy,
that's
though. I look
interesting.
at some of these bosses. These are highly aggressive, and at least at first, you don't really have a lot of charges in your healing cord. So a few mistakes can earn an early death. At least the
Right.
load times are fast, and the bosses
Look at
seem
that.
like they're
Woo, woo,
usually
woo,
close to the
woo,
checkpoint.
woo.
So repeating a fight isn't quite as frustrating as it could be. The game also knows when you die because bosses will often comment on it when Wukong returns. So it doesn't look like
Oh, that's cool.
there, but it's probably not going to be easy either.
Oh, I have no idea.
At number 4, there is loot and crafting. One thing
Loot and
I
crafting,
failed to mention
okay.
is that there are some systems in the game outside of combat.
I understood
As well
the
as
loot,
the
but
world,
crafting,
there are
I don't
resources
know.
to collect and items to craft. There's boss items. That
It
give you
depends on how they do
weapons,
it.
And there are NPCs that do things that make your gourd's healing more effective or add additional effects to your healing, like also making it so that restores mana. Great. Love that. There are also new weapons to find, which sound like they're variations on the staff, but there's also armor sets which give the Monkey King additional buffs and status effects.
That's pretty cool,
And the
okay.
effects are made more powerful by wearing a complete set. Further,
Okay.
there are vendors and side quests, so it seems like there's
Vendors and side
in
quests.
the game outside of just fight, which is great because I do like my progression systems. At number 3, this is not an open world. I want to make that very clear. The previews give maybe an impression that Black Myth could be set in a massive Elden Ring style open world, but straight from the mouths of the developers, that is not the case.
Oh, that's not the
According to them,
case.
The game is split into linear, level-like chapters.
So like Neo.
A big interconnected world. The game is a story-based, straightforward experience, and if I'm completely honest with you, I like that. Like I said,
I mean, I like it too.
I
Dope.
love all these games with parries. I love all this stuff. It's not that I'm against any of it, but sometimes it's just nice to have a little bit of a change of pace. I think this is in that sort of there's no parry category of things to say about this game. I like a level-based linear game.
I do too.
In
Yeah.
fact, a lot of my favorite games are exactly
Yeah,
that.
exactly.
Old and new. The mission
He's not wrong.
demo basically funnels you on a single path with a few small branches here and there for little bonuses like loot and sometimes something more substantial like an optional boss.
That's pretty
doesn't
cool.
mean it's just one big corridor like Final Fantasy 13 or something. From the previews, the world looks fairly lush and you can explore it in a way that feels natural, but all these mountains and vistas you can
Look
see
at that. Just turn into a fly, get away from
go
everybody.
there. Todd Howard would have nothing to say about those vistas. There are apparently a lot of invisible walls, too, which makes it sound
Really?
a lot more like an action game with some RPG elements than a full-on Souls-like, but that's
Yeah.
okay. Again, this looks like a change of pace in a lot of ways. Like, it obviously plays into a lot of current conventions, but it's giving it to us in a different way. And
Yeah, I'm okay with that. Yeah. I think it
Moving
sounds
on to number 2,
great.
the game length. This is a big open question. Back in 2020, in an interview with the game's producers,
Over
they said the game
100
would
different
take
enemy
at least
types,
15
hours.
playtime, which sounds pretty short. But
It's
we really
pretty
don't
short.
know what that means. Is it a Miyazaki-level troll where the devs intentionally undersell how long the game is? Maybe they were sincere, but that was 4 years ago. Things could have changed in scope since.
I mean,
Shorter could be
15-hour game
significantly
isn't
longer. We don't know.
terrible,
Leaks have
but
pointed
it's...
to a lot of content, so it's hard to say. Like the devs say the final game will have around 100 unique monsters. Some leakers made the bold claims that the game has
160
over
enemy
160
types,
and around
80
bosses,
bosses.
which sounds completely nuts for
It does sound
a
nuts.
15-hour game. But then again, there were 7 bosses in the 2-hour Gamescom demo, so there's a reason why some people are saying the game feels a little like a boss rush, because there are a lot of fights in a very short period of time.
Oh, so maybe that's why it's only like 15 hours.
So maybe the game opens up a little bit more as it goes, and maybe have fewer, more spaced out battles and larger levels.
It's just straight up like fighting
bosses in a row in the start of the game.
Fighting bosses,
and maybe some of this stuff
nonstop
come from later in the game. I don't know, but based on all this, it's
don't sound terrible.
Clear exactly how long this game's going to be. One thing is for sure, though, there's going to be a whole lot of content here. I mean, look at the trailers. There's so many
people like boss rush games. I don't mind them.
If it's on the shorter side, there's going to be plenty to keep you busy.
Oh yeah, there'll be side missions and stuff. They might just say 15 hours for like the base game.
Some choices to make with real consequences and 3 different endings. This all comes from leaks.
3 different endings.
Tell you how accurate
consequences.
That is, but if it's true, there's probably some pretty good replay value. And finally, at number 1, everything else, the important stuff you need to know to play the game. The highly anticipated Black Myth Wukong is finally coming out August 20th.
Yeah,
for
crazy.
PlayStation 5, Steam,
12 days.
The Epic Game Store. Yep, no Xbox. You might
Insanity.
think it's kind of exclusive, but apparently not. The devs just didn't want to take the time to port the game over to Microsoft console.
What?
At least it'll show up on PC, which does have some pretty beefy requirements. The game needs at least 100.
It's not coming out for Xbox?
Storage and requires an SSD on
Yikes.
PC, so you better clear out some space if you're going that route. And one more thing for console players, if you're into physical games, you need to wait for this one. The day 1 box copies are just going to be a code in a box. There's no actual disc. So if you're getting the game day 1, go digital. There are apparently plans for a base physical edition that'll come out a few months later, but on release it's just an empty box. So
it looks very cool.
Black Myth Wukong right now. It's a game made by a shockingly
that pre-order looks amazing.
There's only about 100 devs on staff compared to something Stellar Blade, which was made by a team of over 300. So there's
only 100 devs for this game. It looks incredible.
For concern, the game length and the level design, but the bosses, visuals, combat, it all looks fantastic. My fingers are crossed this one turns out to be something special.
Oh yeah.
Because frankly, the potential is off the charts on this one. I'm really excited for it. How about you?
Yeah, super excited, Falcon.
If you like this video, click like. If you're not subscribed, now's a great time to
subscribe to Game Ranks
every day of the week.
Give Falcon a nice like.
Subscription, so click subscribe. Don't forget to enable notifications. And as always, we thank you very much for watching this video. I'm Falcon. You can follow me on Twitter at Falcon the Hero. We'll see you next time right here on Game Ranks.
That was dope. I can't wait for this game to come out. I'm excited.